Good morning, everyone. How are you? Today is Monday, and we have another session of Back to Basics Practice Management. This time, our topic is human resources, and what we are thrilled to have Bill Polin as the Business Performance Advisor from Insperity, and we will be discussing human resources, and we're going to be unlocking practical tips that will help small business owners. And in that is included along the small business owners are the independent physician practices, and I think these tips are going to be translatable across industries in relationship to employer and employee. So without further ado, I am going to bring Bill Polin in, and we're going to dive into everything that is human resources. So here we are. Hi, Bill. How are you?
Morning, Sharon. I'm great. Thanks. How are you today?
Very well. Loving the sunny Monday. That's always a plus. Though I don't mind the rain last week, but today's Monday, so I definitely appreciate a good sunny weather.
That's right. It's going to get a little warmer here next couple of days too.
Yes, at least in the East Coast. I'm not sure about the rest of the West Coast and South and North,
In the
but at least
Philadelphia
here in
area.
the East Coast, yeah, exactly. At least in the Pennsylvania area, we're going to have some great sunny days. So yes, great point. So looking forward to enjoying the outdoors before it gets really chilly and we're all inside. All right, so let's delve into HR and let's talk about the topic HR and HR can be so many things. There's so many plethoras of topics that fall under that. And one of the things that we're going to start with is in my area, and again, this is for, all, I think, translatable in our topic across, industries and across all small business owners. With, independent physician practices, looking to what human resources and a part of their operations, if I were a new brand new physician practice, or whether I'm an existing physician practice, and looking to look at my human resources and what I need to do in order to establish practical tips about having that in place. Conversely, in an existing practice, it's when is a good time to review. And what I'd like to hear, in that first question of a brand new practice is, when do I start to think about making sure I have all the things that I need, or at least the essential ones when I get started. And then, along the way, we have some things that we need to add on. So Bill, go right ahead and let's dive into that. And we can certainly segue into existing practice as we continue in our conversation.
Yeah. Well, one of the things for a new practice owner or a new business owner is it's a balancing act between handling the basics of HR, some of the obvious things you need to be completed, with the things that you don't know about. So let's face it, nobody goes into their own business. No one wants to open their own practice, or no one goes into opening their own practice to manage people. They open their own business, they manage their own practice because they're really skilled at what they do. They're knowledgeable, they have a passion for something, and they want to use those skills and passions to earn a living, support their family, to make money. You don't go into business looking to manage HR. So it's a balancing act, as I said, between the basics, the obvious things that need to be completed, with the things you don't know. And it's the old saying, you don't know what you don't know. So a couple of examples. The first, from an obvious standpoint, is if you're going to open your own practice and hire employees, you need to get them paid. So there needs to be some type of payroll processing mechanism in place to pay the employees. So that's an obvious one. But it's the other layers of HR, the things that you don't know about, the things you're not knowledgeable about managing people. Those are the things that keep business owners up at night. And that's why many of them choose to partner with a company like Insperity. Because when you partner with someone like Insperity, you know it'll be done correctly, and you will be able to sleep easy. So just a little background about Insperity. Insperity is known as a PEO. We are a professional employers organization. And we give the same HR system to a small business that a Fortune 500 company would get. So it doesn't matter if you're a small physician practice with 20 employees or a large corporation with 6,000 employees. Every business has different challenges in regards to handling their people. The difference is that large corporation has more tools at their disposal to handle those HR challenges, whereas that small business may not. So we level the playing field and give the same toolbox to that smaller physician practice, that smaller small business, that the same toolbox as a large Fortune 500 corporation. So that's kind of how we help businesses level the playing field.
And that's important, Bill, because I think, I often say, our independent physician practices are our small business in the community, right? They are their own owners. And then there's a level of, growth and sustainability and viability in that, in order to, help them continue in their journey and the reasons why they went, for business on their own. So that's key to, and it sounds like we're working with Insperity, it allows them that, level of playing field, that they have access to tools that, as a small business owner, it feels like, I have a lifeline. And that is truly, from a sustainability, I believe, and continue growth, or it could be the reverse, but either way, it sounds like it's a really nice tool to have, a company and tools to be able to maintain that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So, so you mentioned, we start with paying the employees. What else, in an employee-employer relationship, from the basis of human resources, is there? You mentioned there's a little bit more. We start off with payroll. That's great. We're paying our employees. What else in the cadre could we mention that would be also, helpful in that continuous relationship between employer and employee?
Well, I think the best way to answer that, Sharon, is just to go through the life cycle of the employee. What does it look like from the beginning and through the employee's tenure? And there's different questions that come up. There's different decisions that need to be made depending on what aspect of the process we're talking about. So the first thing is, once you've identified or once you've made the decision to open your own office and hire employees, the first question is, where are the employees going to come from? Now, a common answer when a business is first starting out is, we're going to hire our employees from our friends and family network. We're going to hire my mother, going to hire my sister, going to hire my cousin, my friends. Those are all sound plans because you know what you're going to get from those people. You already know them. You know you're not going to have many workplace issues. You can help mold the culture of your business through those people fairly easily. But not everyone has that luxury of being able to hire their friends and family. You have to go outside of that network to hire your employees. So what does that entail? Well, the first thing is you have to post your job openings on some type of a job site, Indeed.com, for example. You need to create and write a job description. You need to conduct interviews. And as you go through the interviews, who's going to interview those people? Is it going to be you? What questions do you ask? What questions don't you ask? Because as you know, there are some questions out there that if they're posed incorrectly, the candidate could go down the track of, that was kind of a discriminatory question I was asked. As these interviews are going forward, you're asking yourself, is this person going to fit into the culture I'm trying to develop at my practice? So you've identified a couple of candidates that you think are solid. The next question is, how much do I pay them? What's their salary going to be? What's a competitive salary in the market for this job description and for this level of experience? Certainly want to be competitive with it. I don't want to lowball the salary. If I lowball it, that employee is always going to be looking for another job somewhere. Are they going to be salaried employees or are they going to be hourly employees? If it's an hourly employee, how do I keep track of their hours? Those are all decisions that have to be made in advance. Then you talk about onboarding. So once you've just made the decision to hire someone, how do you get them onboarded? What IRS documents need to be signed? How are those documents submitted? What documents need to be verified? How do I verify them? Driver's license, passport, Do I need to make photocopies? Do I need to keep any of this information on file? If you're just starting up a business and have no background in HR, these are all questions you may not know the answers to. Do you have an employee agreement to sign? Any type of a contract? Is there an employee handbook in place, rules and regulations? Does the candidate need to agree to those rules and regulations before accepting the job? Training modules, workplace behavior, anti-harassment training. All of these things need to be done in advance, again, in a way to educate your employees about appropriate conduct, but also to protect yourself on the back end should any issues pop up. Now we got payroll processing. How are you going to pay your employees on time? That's probably the number one thing. You want to keep your employees
Right.
happy, you got to pay them on time.
Absolutely.
Direct deposit, paper checks. Do you outsource the payroll to a payroll processing company? Do you handle it internally? Do you have the bandwidth to handle it internally using a program like QuickBooks? But now you have the question of taxes and garnishments. If you don't pay your taxes properly, if you don't handle the garnishments correctly, there's consequences. The IRS could come back to you and say, you know what? You didn't pay enough in payroll taxes last year. So you got to pay us to make us whole. We're then going to charge you interest, and then we're going to fine you on top of that because you didn't handle it the right way.
Ouch.
Drill it down even further. Now you're in the conversation of insurance and benefits. You got to have workers' comp insurance. That's a minimal cost. It's a percentage of the employee's salary. It's something that needs to get done, especially in the physician office realm where there are going to be needles and fluids and things like that. EPLI insurance. Not everyone has heard of EPLI insurance. Employers Practices Liability Insurance is what it stands for. It's recommended that every business has EPLI insurance, but certainly not mandatory like workers' comp. But EPLI insurance helps protect the business from, a wrongful termination lawsuit, any discriminatory claims that may come up. That's what that's there for. And then you have the question of medical benefits. So the first question is, do I even offer benefits to my employees? Well, for this audience, physician practice owners, medical industry, I think the answer is yes. You're going to offer medical benefits. You certainly want to have the reputation of being a destination workplace. Having a strong medical plan in place helps recruiting employees, helps retaining your employees. But there's decisions that come along with it, of course. What type of plans do you offer? PPOs, EPOs, HMOs, POS. You can include a couple of HDHPs for the employees to choose from. How many options can the employees choose? How much do you contribute? You're going to make the employees pay 100% of the medical, or are you going to meet them in the middle somewhere? You can make these decisions in conjunction with a broker. That's a great answer. But here's the thing. One of the things I'll convey, many times the medical broker you work with is a different person than the broker you'll work with for workers' comp. So now you're dealing with a medical broker. You're dealing with a workers' comp broker. You're dealing with a payroll processing company somewhere. If you do go the route of having an employee contract or an employee handbook, you have a lawyer that's in place. So there's 3 or 4 different vendors right now that you have to keep tabs on. One of the benefits of Insperity and one of the benefits of the PEO model is consolidation of those vendors. Everything that I've mentioned up until this point is in our wheelhouse. We assist businesses with every item that we've just talked about. You don't have to deal with multiple vendors. You don't have to deal with multiple renewal dates. Everything is under one umbrella. But then continue the benefit conversation. You're going to offer a 401k. Well, now you're going to have another person brought into another vendor to bring in. Dental, vision insurance, life insurance, long-term, short-term disability. These are all decisions that need to be made in advance. The employee hasn't even begun working yet, and these need to be in place. So there's a lot, Sharon. As a business gets up and running, there's a lot to think about, a lot of processes to have in place before you open up for business. And then there's a whole other bunch of challenges once the business is open.
So I like the life cycle of an employee that you just mentioned, and I think that essentially just speaks to the journey, right, between an employer and employee, and that life cycle affects not only the organization but also its employee as well as the employer. And so what there was a lot that you mentioned, and so I just wanted to kind of unpack a little bit in terms of what would be the essential as a start on a brand new physician opening a practice. What is the essential that we could say, okay, this needs to happen first, and then along your and when the business opens, we can certainly add these on. What I also what heard is that with Insperity, it's everything, right? There's only, you're not separated in many vendors that you're dealing with. It's a one-stop shop. So it's not that you have to find different vendors or manage different vendors, if you will, because it's already in one house. Having said that, what would you recommend as the first few pieces? I mean, knowing that you guys have a one-stop shop, but still kind of like what would be important, let's say, that we would want to emphasize. We said already paying the employee, but there are other things that you mentioned that I think could also be a good essential start.
Well, it's twofold. Certainly, the most important things are the items you need to have in place to hire your employees, because you can't get your business up and running without your employees. So, yeah, the obvious one we already talked about, payroll, but benefits, workers' comp, things like that, mandatory at the beginning. But
Okay.
the other thing that sometimes business owners don't think about, but it's equally important, is how do you protect the business? How do you insulate the business when something goes wrong? So that's why I mentioned things like the training for harassment or anti workplace behavior, proper workplace behavior. Because if you have a paper trail of showing that all the employees have gone through this training, it can protect you down the road should something happen. Um, the outsourcing of the payroll, that can be important because, again, that example, if something goes wrong. So, for example, if you partner with Insperity, we handle payroll. That's a high function of what we do. If there's ever an issue with payroll, if the IRS says you didn't pay enough in taxes, they don't go after the individual practice owner. They go after Insperity. 100% of the risk from a payroll perspective is now on the shoulders of Insperity and not on the practice. So that's a way that the practice owner can insulate the business, can insulate it and protect itself from any of those issues that come up.
Now, let's talk about, let's segue our to the existing practices, and this may also be kind of translatable in both. When do we review, our employee handbook? When do we review our standard operating, procedures or processes? And then, we also want to think about, employee retention and engagement, right? And so you mentioned training there. What else could, in employment retention and engagement that they can also provide? So it's that, what I heard was that, we definitely want to protect and insulate our businesses in terms of human resources that we talked about, for the topics that we talked about, for not only benefits from, not only for insurance, but also the, other procedures. So what else is there? Because, there's a lot of, in the healthcare where if staff turn over and, there's people leaving, there's people staying. And so, the stability is also important as well. What does Insperity offer in terms of, retainment and engagement and so on?
Okay. Well, let me just break that question up here. I think the first part you asked was about timing.
Correct.
So let's tackle that one here first, to use a football term. But what we see frequently, and there is no one size fits all, there's no perfect answer. But what we see the majority of the time is people make decisions regarding their HR on the calendar year, beginning January 1st. So November, December, October, we're getting into our busy time at Insperity because business owners are beginning to evaluate their operations in advance of January 1st. Are there going to be any cultural shifts? Are we going to go with another payroll company? What are we doing for benefits? All of those things. Um, if you're not on a January 1st system, oftentimes they choose to evaluate these operations in conjunction with their medical renewal, whenever that may be, and it does vary, but we do see most of it as January 1st. And then I
Okay.
also think whatever decisions that are made from a cultural standpoint, it's always good to follow up with on the core, your goals per se. We enact goals here on January 1st, but it's always good to come back on April 1st at the start of Q2. How are we doing? Are we achieving what we set
Mhm.
out to do in January? You follow it up at the midpoint, July, follow up at the beginning of Q4. And just so you're always on some type of constant reevaluation as to how things are going. Now, the idea of employee culture, employment culture, that's an important thing. And it's really, really difficult to quantify. But
Mhm.
I think there's a couple of things in place that practice owners should be on the lookout for. So the first thing is after you have your practice up and running, and it could be 6 months down the road, it could be 12 months after you open the doors,
Mhm.
whatever it is. But you probably should have some type of employee performance system in place. Um, Performance reviews, some type of process to conduct those performance reviews. Are you going to have some type of way to reward good job performance? Provide
Mhm.
bonuses to your employees, provide raises, promotions. What
Mhm.
mechanism, what strategy are you going to have to understand who's in play for a bonus or for a raise? But then also, it comes back to protecting yourself now, too. If you promote someone, you would promote employee A. Employee B might be disappointed. They may have been a candidate for the promotion as well, and they didn't get it. They might be upset and make a stink and ask, why did I not get the promotion? Why did this person? Your procedures have to have a paper trail to say, here's why we went in this direction and not to you, so that you can again defend yourself and protect yourself should that person make a big stink about it down the road. Um, and then you also
Yeah.
have, there's going to be situations that come up when it just simply isn't working. It's just
Mhm.
not working out. And you've made the decision, you got to let someone go. Again, paper trail. How have you come to this decision? Do you have your documentation? Do you have your ducks aligned in a row to defend that decision? How do you communicate this with your employee? Is their workplace production so egregiously bad that you feel you need to terminate them immediately? Maybe you've made the decision, we're going to let you go, but we're going to give you a month or two to you keep working with us. But after a month or two, we're going to let you go. Use this month or two to find something else so you can kind of leave the business gracefully. And then are you staying compliant with these conversations? But it does tie into employee retention. It does tie into employee culture. Simple things. And here's something that people don't think about sometimes. Go back to when you made the decision to hire someone. What job was that person interviewing for? So sometimes we see this happen. Someone is interviewing or has applied for a job to be, say, the practice manager, kind of work behind the scenes. And small businesses, they're lean. So that person is brought on. Next thing you know, instead of being a back office support person, they're sitting at the main desk welcoming patients as they come in. That wasn't part of the original job description, but that was something that that person was forced to do based on the business. That does not lead to great employee retention practices. That person is doing a job they did not sign up for. Um, and so that could be a problem. You never want to have an HR issue be a reason why someone voluntarily leaves the business. You never want that to happen. There's going to be things that come up from a retention standpoint. Family members are going to get another, spouse is going to get another job and force the employee to move away. That would be an example. Family issues come up. Someone might not be able to work anymore. But you don't want something like a job description. You don't want something like poor benefit offerings. You don't want something like a low salary to be a reason why someone leaves your business to take another job. Because when you lose an employee, you need to replace that employee. And however you replace them, by promoting someone from within or hiring from the outside, there's going to be a ramp up period to get that new employee up to speed. That's opportunities for, a little bit of lost revenue in some industries, but also there's a time commitment. This new employee, who's going to train this person? You going to train them, or is another one of your team members going to train this new employee? Time is money, and the distraction of training a new employee is a distraction from taking your mind off of the things that are most important to running the practice. So just
So
a couple
you've
things to think about from a retention standpoint.
Gotcha. You've given us a whole lot of things to think about, and I just want to recap. And they're all good stuff to think about with human resources, because again, there are some things that as business owners, we may have it at the top of our mind, but also some things that we over time may sort of drop at the wayside. I do want to recap in terms of what you said, that timing, we are now in quarter four, really,
Yep.
that October, November, December. And so, if your renewal is within around that time frame, I think January 1st, but I often like the pre-planning, right? You look at where you are and seeing what are some of the modifications based on your quarterly review. So that's great. I think quarterly is something that can be taken into account since there's 4 quarters in the year, but I think you may want to emphasize, a quarter four that is now upcoming in January, that in for some changes and things in consideration. So I like the fact that timing for an existing practice, and even just a brand new to consider of how they want to do frequently looking at their SOP, their handbook, their systems, and we all we in our goals and in trying to achieve our goals. I think the thing to think about is what kind of systems we have in place that is going to be working for us. And I think in a nutshell, I feel like with what Insperity has for a one-stop shop, it makes sense to be able to look at those systems as a whole. So that's great that they don't have to go very, elsewhere in order to look at one house. The retention piece that I think that I wanted to, get back to, and with employees, and also keeping in mind, your example of a promotion, within 2 employees that were vying for the same position. I do think that, the thought of, what kind of, even though you said no to the one employee, but yes to the other, but I think also offer an opportunity of what that other employee could do, in time of some kind of a graduated, promotion of some sort. You know what I mean? To think about what your employee promotion looks like and what that means, and the measures that, in what that promotion looks like for your staff. So all good stuff, Bill. I mean, you have hit so many fine points, with us today. And I think what I would like to do to make sure is that, how do we reach you? I mean, with all that information, is a lot to absorb, but I do think that we've unpacked, some things, each item and line item to think about and marinate. But I do want to give you the opportunity to make sure that if they need to reach you, what's the best way, and and how they can start thinking now. We are quarter four, but maybe it's something that we were planning to see today, but we want to make sure that they're thinking about it towards the future.
Sure. And just to rehash and reiterate, everything that I've mentioned here this morning is something that Insperity helps with. It, and it's all under one umbrella. It's all part of our service. And there's other things that I didn't even touch on. But as part of our solution, you have a team of dedicated HR professionals to help. You'll be on a first name basis with these people. You'll have direct lines of communication with them via phone and email, to help with any HR related item. If you're a larger practice, maybe you have multiple offices, maybe 2 offices in 2 different states, we can help with managing some of that state by state compliance. And we do it at a high level. We're publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. We're a very transparent organization, very reputable, a lot of credibility. I'd be open to having a conversation with anyone, whether you are starting your own practice or you've already been in business, because we can help in all of those areas. We can provide, if you're starting up, we can provide that turnkey solution, turn the key, lights go on, and let's get up and running. As well as we can assist the existing operation kind of clean up their HR if there are any issues. If here we are, January 1st is approaching, as we discussed. If you're getting a really high medical benefit renewal for January 1, and you're looking to investigate that, we can assist. The best, and I can help in any practice in all 50 states. So what I would ask is just reach out to me. My email is either in the chat, or you can see it next to my name here under on the screen, william.polin, Polin, at insperity.com. And would just love to, upon receipt of that, just schedule a 30-minute, 45-minute conversation as to what's going on within your practice, and we can discuss options for moving forward at that point.
Excellent. Well, Bill, like I said, thank you again. But now you've alluded we've only touched the surface, so there might be a round two. So we're excited to bring you back, hopefully, for that round two, since we've only touched the surface. And, like I said, HR is one of those topics where I think it's good to have a good visit again in terms of where you are in the organization, how to protect your business, as well as how to retain and engage your employees, and if you have your systems in place. So if you want to reach out to Bill in Insperity, his contact information is william.polin@insperity.com. He'd be happy to walk you through, all the things that we talked about. And we said a lot, but feel free to reach out to Bill and, ask the questions away. And again, Bill, thank you for being a guest. I so appreciate your time. And hopefully this was helpful for everyone. And you have a great week.
Thanks, Sharon. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on. Had a great time.
Excellent. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks. Have a great day, everyone.
All right. That was